Hello and welcome to the August 2023 update on the state of the American traveler. We are thrilled to have so many of our travel industry colleagues joining us from so many different places. I'm Erin Francis Cummings, President and CEO of Destination Analysts. We at Destination Analysts are a team of market researchers generating deep insights into audiences, brand, and marketing performance, which provide our clients peace of mind and competitive advantage. If we can be of any service to you in your own strategies, please reach out to us. We'd love to work with you. Joining me from our team today are Dave Bratton, our founder and managing director, and Miha Gallagher, our vice president of research. Dave and Miha are happy to answer any questions that you might have, or if you just want to say hi, please use the chat or the Q&A feature to talk to them. On the agenda today, the latest on Americans and travel, including their financial sentiment, travel volume, expectations for the next 12 months, and how to market to them. Following this, we have a fantastic panel on the topic of podcasts. For that discussion, we'll be joined by Destination Analyst Director of Marketing, Jennifer Griswold, who will be interviewing Laura Fernandez, Head of Travel and Tourism at SiriusXM, Jeremy Witt, SVP of Media Strategy at BVK, and Aaron Miller from Armchair Productions, about the growing market of podcasts among American travelers and how travel brands can effectively activate marketing and advertising strategies with this medium. With podcasts gaining immense popularity and influence, Jen and the panel will delve into evaluating podcast opportunities, crafting compelling advertising strategies, and measuring the success of podcast campaigns. Get your questions ready for this amazing group. Our independently produced research is provided to help our travel industry colleagues stay abreast of important travel trends and consumer behaviors and stay informed on the outlook for travel. Following the live stream, a recording and deck will be available at destinationanalyst.com and will also be emailed to you. The State of the American Traveler Study is based on a monthly online survey of 4,000 US-based travelers from each of the four major regions of the US about their travel behaviors, perspectives, and opinions. After the data is collected, it's weighted by geography and demographics. This latest update represents survey data collected July 17th through 21st. I will start today with financial sentiment. Here are some of the latest headlines about the economy. US GDP growth has economists feeling better. Inflation is at a 2-year low. But not just savings, but money overall is still tight for many Americans. When asked if they or their household are better off or worse off financially than they were a year ago, 30.7% said that they're better. Meanwhile, 34% said they're worse off relative to a year ago. Despite the greater proportion who say they are worse off financially now compared to a year ago, on the bright side, American travelers are actually feeling better off financially now relative to how they felt 1 year ago. In fact, this metric is up 5 points. We also ask American travelers if they feel that the present is a good or bad time to spend money on their leisure travel. This month, 28.9% said it's a good time. A larger 36% said it is a bad time. The good news is the gap between the it's a bad time to spend on travel group and it's a good time to spend on travel group has gotten smaller in the last couple months. However, the proportion of Americans who feel it's a good time is only marginally where it was 1 year ago. Let's look at what Americans expect to spend on leisure travel in the next 12 months. Here's where we were in 2022 with a sharp rise at the end of the year. And here's 2023, where there was a record peak in February at $4,677. Since then, budgets have steadily declined, now at $3,505. This is the lowest average budgets have reached since October of 2021. One possible factor, of course, is fear of recession. Right now, 49.4% of American travelers expect the US will enter a recession in the next 6 months. And yet, fears of a recession have been diminishing, in fact, reaching a 16-month low. But the cautionary mindset may still endure. Right now, 61.4% of American travelers agree they're being careful with their money because of their recession concerns. In fact, the proportion of travelers exercising spending caution actually increased slightly this month, despite a lessening degree of fear of an impending recession. Let's now take a look at what has been deterring Americans from traveling as much as they would have otherwise preferred in the past 6 months. Yes, we have a fear of flight cancellations, that's at about 10%, and crowds at 13%, and not enough PTO at 14%. But the primary deterrents to travel are all firmly financial. 41.2% say travel is too expensive right now. The percent of American travelers citing personal financial reasons as a recent deterrent to travel reached 38.2% for the second time this year. A third of Americans said gas prices kept them from taking trips they would have liked to, and 27.8% cited high airfare costs as keeping them home. Indeed, the percent of Americans agreeing high travel prices have kept me from traveling in the past month reached 46.2%. This is amongst the highest that this has reached this year. And yet, when we ask Americans their expectations for their household's future financial situation, more than half of American travelers anticipate that they will be better off financially next year compared to now. Just 12.6% feeling that they will be worse off. This is an 11-point gain from the same period last year. It's the most optimistic American travelers have felt about their future finances since July of 2021. There's also some other bullish feelings they have about the economy that I will share with you in just a little bit. 86% of American travelers report strong levels of excitement about travel in the coming months. And although this might be down slightly, excitement for travel remains at record levels, 8.1 on a scale from 0 to 11. Or excuse me, 0 to 10. To wrap this all together in a single data point for you, we produce the current and future travel sentiment indices, comprised of the questions that you're seeing on screen. Based on what these indices show now, current travel enthusiasm improved this month and is well above where it was 1 year ago. Expectations for future travel is relatively flat this month, but is also well above where it stood 1 year ago. To illustrate this growth and the likely sustained health for the industry into the future, let's take a look at some metrics related to Americans' recent travel volume. This chart shows the percent of Americans who reported taking an overnight trip for each of these reasons: leisure, visiting friends and relatives, business, convention, other, and the average number of these trips types taken is shown on the right. Let's look at how overnight trip volume has tracked over time. Here's 2023, and here's last year. You can really see the strong relative difference in trip volume. 45.8% of American travelers took an overnight trip in the past month alone, far exceeding July 2022's rate of 39%. And what about day trips? Here's a chart showing you day trips by trip type in the past month, as well as the average reported number of those trips. Doing the same exercise of looking back, here's this year, and here's the same period last year. Day trip volume has really grown. Over 54% of travelers took a leisure day trip in the past month. 1 year ago, this stood at just 36%. Interestingly, leisure day trips have risen at a higher rate than overnight leisure trips. A year ago, the percentages of Americans reporting taking leisure day trips and overnight leisure trips was about the same, overnight even outpacing day trips a bit, 38.7% to 35.8%. But now the percent of leisure day trips is about 10 points higher than overnight trips. So might we expect trip volume to hold? This is last month's chart of data showing the percent of American travelers reporting having trip plans by each of these future months. Now the green bars show what American travelers reported to us this month. Remaining stable from June, just over 83% of American travelers have existing trip plans for the next 12 months. And we see growth in the percent who are reporting trip plans for future months. In summary, on financial sentiment and the travel outlook this month, travel sentiment remains generally strong, even though travelers are grappling with elevated travel costs. Current travel sentiment index was stable in July. Excitement to travel remains at near record highs. Concerns about recession continue to lessen in July. For the first time, under 50% of travelers expect to enter a recession in the next 6 months. The percent of travelers that are being careful with their spending due to recessionary concerns, however, does remain quite high. Elevated travel prices continue to impact travel decision-making. 41% say high prices have kept them from traveling this month. 32% say that high prices have led them to cancel an upcoming trip. Despite traveler concerns about the economy and high prices, summer travel volume is robust. 45% of travelers took an overnight trip in the past month, far exceeding last year's rate of 39%. Fully 54% of travelers took a day trip in the past month, and 1 year ago that stood at just 36%. All right, to further help us understand what is going on with American travelers, let's dig deeper and wider into their expectations for not just travel, but the greater world in the next several months. So we'll essentially rely on the wisdom of crowds to make some predictions. As you might recall, in January, we asked American travelers their predictions about a number of factors, predicaments and issues that impact travel, from geopolitics to technology advancements. And this month, we revisited these predictions to see what beliefs may have shifted in the past 6 months, particularly in light of current events and many tourism records being set. We'll first look at predictions directly related to travel and the travel industry. The findings in January pointed to a real wariness about the travel industry for its issues with being expensive, being understaffed, and lacking infrastructure. So how do travelers feel now? Price gouging will become more common in the travel industry. 62.6% say this is likely in the next year. This actually represents slightly fewer who believe this now compared to in January, down from 63.8%. Labor shortages will be a problem for the travel industry. 61.8% predict this. This also represents a lessening belief, down from 65.1% in January. Domestic travel will become generally more frustrating: overcrowding, air travel breakdowns, poor customer service, etc. 61.7% say that this is likely to be true. There's actually slightly more belief now that domestic travel will become generally more frustrating than there was in January. It's up from 60% reported in January. Travelers will sour on the use of home rental services like Airbnb, VRBO, etc. 36.9% say this is likely to occur. This is virtually unchanged from 6 months ago. Popular national parks will be overrun with tourists. 44.7% predict this. This represents a more than 5-point jump, up from 39.4%. American cities will become more dangerous and unmanageable places to visit. 47.7% believe that this is likely. This is unchanged over the last several months. More authentic, less commercial travel experiences will grow in popularity. 50.4% predict this. This represents a very slight 1-point decrease. I'll take a dream trip to somewhere exciting in 2023. 39.1% feel some confidence in this coming to reality. Probably unsurprising given where we are in the year, this represents a moderate decrease from 44.8% back in January. Okay, very important for travel. Let's look at predictions about things related to the economy. Gasoline prices will fall significantly during the year. 19.3% expect this. This is a strong decrease from 30.7% who predicted that in January. The US stock market will enter a bull market, meaning stock prices will rise strongly. 32.9% say that this is likely. Americans are indeed feeling somewhat more bullish than in January. Let's now look at environmental factors. Wildfires will be a problem in the Western US. 71.9% say that this is likely in the next year, and that indeed represents an increase in that belief from January. I'll be more proactive in reducing the impact of my travel on the environment. 39.3% predict that to be the case for themselves, and that prediction has remained stable. Also very important, what about geopolitical factors? The war between Ukraine and Russia will expand into other countries. 45.3% believe that this is likely. American travelers, though, are unchanged in their expectations on this. America will be pulled into a war in Asia. 25.2% say that this is likely to occur. While less than predicted that the war in Ukraine will expand, there is a moderate 4-point increase in belief that US will be pulled into a war in Asia. All right, let's go on to a much lighter topic. What predictions do Americans have related to marketing? TikTok will become America's most popular social media channel. 40.9% make this prediction. In fact, more Americans do believe this now than back in January. The appeal and use of social media travel influencers will decline. 28.8% say this is likely to occur. This represents a very slight increase. Now let's look at what's predicted around technology. And I can tell you that American travelers appear to believe that some of the latest technology will be transformative to the travel industry relatively soon. Artificial intelligence will begin to replace travel agents or advisors. 54.4% say this is likely. And that represents a 16-point leap from January. At the same time, 31.7% predict that travel agents and advisors will be used more by travelers in the next year. And that represents a more than 6-point increase. I will purchase my first virtual reality headset. 18.5% predict this for themselves. And this is a slight increase in belief in this. By the way, I would have not predicted that for myself back in January, but here I am. I just bought my first VR headset. It's actually for my son, but I've had a lot of fun checking it out myself. The metaverse will start to replace some real world travel. 30% say that this is likely. And we see a fairly strong increase here, up from 21.3% who predicted that back in January. Here now are the predictions with the highest degree of agreement among American travelers. Wildfires, domestic travel becoming more frustrating, travel price gouging, travel industry labor shortages, AI replacing some travel agents. I feel like we're getting attacked here. But here are the predictions with more moderate levels of belief. And here are those that Americans are less likely to feel will occur, those being that will be pulled into war in Asia, that there will be a decline in social media influencers' influence, and the first VR headset purchases. And these are the predictions with the greatest change since January. A decreased belief in the likelihood that the travel industry will be plagued by labor shortages, and an increased belief in national parks being overrun with tourists, the metaverse replacing real-world travel, AI replacing travel agents, and travel advisors becoming more popular. And I can't forget the personal. One we ask here is, the next year will be a great year for me personally. 54% predict this for themselves. A little sadly, this represents a moderate decrease, but hopefully the optimism will return once we get into my favorite season, which is the holidays, coming up probably quicker than we all realize. Okay. I'm going to end with some important travel marketing insights from our latest The State of the American Traveler report. First, planning windows. They look to be shrinking. As you can see on the chart on the right, in January, American travelers said they would take 11.5 weeks on average to plan a week-long domestic trip. Since then, that planning window has continued to get shorter, with American travelers now reporting that they would begin planning such a trip just 9.8 weeks out. Americans who traveled in the past month said they planned this most recent trip of theirs 6.4 weeks out. Given the continued jitters about the economy, note that travel rewards programs are essential to many. 51.1% say they are important to how they select and plan travel. When asked to think about how travel destinations could best reach them with their messaging right now, internet searches, online articles and blogs, email campaigns, Facebook, Instagram, and streaming services are commonly cited. 15% of all American travelers cited TikTok. However, it's likely no surprise that TikTok is firmly on top with Gen Z. If we look at the top travel inspiration resources by generation, 42.2% of Gen Z travelers say TikTok is where they would be most receptive to learning about new travel destinations, which is nearly double the percent of millennials who say the same. Millennials continue to cite Instagram and Facebook as their top travel inspiration sources. In fact, TikTok is equivalent to Gen Z as searches are for baby boomers when it comes to source for travel inspiration. Also notable is the more than 10% that now say travel podcasts are a top source of inspiration for them. This is another growing area, and Jen's got some great research to share on American travelers' podcast usage and the profile of these podcast listeners coming up next. So, in summary, on other key trends for you to note this month, travelers predict less price gouging and labor shortages, more crowding, frustration, and artificial intelligence. TikTok and podcasts keep rising. Travel planning windows keep shrinking. And by the way, on TikTok, does your TikTok strategy need research to be grounded in? Our best practices in TikTok content for travel brands is available on-demand report right now. You can just scan that QR code to purchase it today, or you can, of course, reach out to us at info@destinationanalyst.com. We also have really actionable insights on more than 24 travel profiles from our Travel Passion series, from fly fishing to foodies. These reports are your go-to resource for critical insights about the vast and changing interests of today's travelers. Those are available to you at destinationanalyst.com. And if you love keeping on top of the latest travel trends, please follow us on social, where we share out lots of important stats from our research. And if you have any questions about the state of the American traveler or any of our other services, we are so happy to share how our clients are leveraging these for their important decision-making and their strategies. Again, please reach out to us at info@destinationanalyst.com. And I wanted to let you, this community, know that we will be sharing some very important and exciting news about our company. We're over the moon to let you in on this, so watch your email inbox next week for our big announcement. That is it from me for our update on the latest from the state of the American traveler. I'm quite pleased to hand this off to Jen Griswold, our Director of Marketing, and hear and learn from this fantastic group of panelists about podcast strategy. Jen, take it away.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Jennifer Griswold, Destination Analyst Director of Marketing, and I'm here to lead an informative and sure to be inspirational discussion on podcasts and their place in the travel marketing landscape. Before I bring our panelists on, I wanted to share some insights with you on American traveler who listen to podcasts and the profile of those listeners that I had our analytics team pull from the latest State of the American Traveler research. There are some pretty notable and fascinating qualities of regular podcast listening American travelers that will make travel marketers take note. So first off, as you may have already suspected, podcasts have a growing audience. More than 1/3 of American travelers now say that they listen to podcasts, and that's up 4 points since the beginning of this year. So how are they listening? Most commonly reported streaming services that podcast users listen to is YouTube and Spotify. Just over 1/3 say that they use Apple's podcast service. So let's take a look at the content American travelers are consuming via podcast. A bright spot here is that nearly 20% of podcast listeners say that they regularly listen to travel podcasts. But the most popular content types right now are health and fitness, entertainment and pop culture, comedy, and of course, true crime. So what are some of the distinguishing features of our American travelers who regularly listen to podcasts? First, this is clearly a great audience for travel marketers. These travelers who listen to podcasts regularly take more overnight trips than other travelers and highly prioritize travel in their personal budgets. These travelers are much more likely than others to travel by air, stay in hotels, travel internationally, and be more environmentally conscious on their trips. But take note that they're also more likely to cite being too busy at work, and they have a fear of flight cancellations, and both of those are travel deterrents. American travelers who are regular podcast listeners are more digitally, video, and mobile oriented. They're more likely than other travelers to use digital influencers and online video to plan their travel, and they also go to mobile resources for their travel information. More than 1/3 of podcast listening American travelers report that they usually or always use online video to plan their travel. In terms of podcast content, younger listeners have stronger content preferences for entertainment and pop culture and health and fitness, and older travelers are more commonly prefer the news, while the millennial age travelers are more content diverse. Now, I wanted to share those findings for you. And if you're interested in learning more about podcast traveling Americans, please feel free to reach out to me at jennifer@destinationanalyst.com. And I would like to invite our panelists to come online now. I'm going to do a brief introduction of all of you. So we have Laura at Sirius XM Media. We have Aaron at Armchair Productions and Jeremy from BVK. Now, Laura is the head of VP of Industry for the travel vertical at SXM Media. While music and podcasts are her passions, she's also an equestrian traveler from Las Vegas in California, which I think is really cool, Laura.
Oh, I love horses. I'm a horse gal through and through.
Awesome. Next up, we have Aaron. Aaron is an award-winning travel writer and presenter. His podcast studio, Armchair Productions, has been nominated for 2 Webbies and won the Visit USA and British Guild of Travel Writers Best Broadcaster Award. Nice job, Aaron.
Thank you.
Last up on our list is Jeremy. He works extensively in the travel and tourism space throughout his career, and beginning largely at a Las Vegas hotel and national airline, and more recently with BVK. We're so glad to have all of you online today.
Thanks, Jennifer.
Now, my first question I want to direct to Laura. Give me just a second to pull it up. So, Laura.
Yes.
I wanted to ask you. I wanted to start with you, but I want to ask all of you, what trends are you observing in the podcast landscape, particularly concerning travel-related content? And how can our travel brand viewers today leverage these trends to create engaging podcast marketing strategies?
Yeah, I mean, people are obsessed with podcasts, and so are we at SiriusXM. So we have 300 plus original shows like Conan O'Brien, Oprah, Office Ladies. And what's really unique about our podcast, it's not a closed garden. So wherever you listen to podcasts, actually Apple is one of the top places people consume, and YouTube. Our sales team handles all the advertisement and has that exclusive right. There's over 2 million plus podcasts, and over 160 million people listen to podcasts on a daily basis. But podcast marketing can be a little bit complicated. And we have truly at SiriusXM have tried to make for marketers podcasting easy. And whether it's coming up with the correct research and really understanding the travel brand's marketing strategy, because with any RFP we receive, there's typically a couple different audience profiles that the travel brand, whether it's an airline, accommodation, or DMO, that wants to target. And we then look at, and I know we're going to go into more from a research standpoint, but we look at the research to make sure that we're mapping back to the correct podcast for the audience that they want to reach, because it's truly understanding who they're targeting and then employing the right podcast strategy.
Awesome. And Jeremy, from the advertising perspective, what trends are you observing in the podcast landscape?
I think one interesting trend, more specific to travel, is the data that we're seeing that people are listening to podcasts pretty heavily while they're traveling. And I think that's important for a lot of brands who are looking for ways to engage that in-market traveler a little bit more, personally or intimately, right, on new channels that aren't just related to maybe search marketing or display or social advertising. So I think through the ability to geo-target in many ways, looking at people who are, in your destination, knowing that, half of all travel related decisions are made while in market. I think it's really great to see another vehicle like podcasts kind of gaining such like a massive enough reach, right, to be a viable channel for that.
Awesome. And Aaron, what are you seeing and how are travel brands leveraging these trends?
Yeah, I think from a content perspective, a storytelling perspective, it's all about, authenticity, local voices. I think the opportunity is really about utilizing the power of the medium. Audio is a very powerful medium for taking you to places, which is why I think it works so well with travel. So I think when you can hear local people talking, you can hear the passion in someone's voice, you can hear the ambience and the surround around you. I think that's a really effective means of putting people into a destination, into a place, and really making that come alive in their imagination, which is what great content and great storytelling is all about.
Excellent. And Aaron, I want to stay with you and ask what podcasts cover a wide range of topics and genres. So how can travel brands identify and partner with podcasts that align with their brand message so that they can target their audiences effectively?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. I think, there's the kind of throw stuff at the wall and see what hits method. But I think with podcasting, one of the opportunities is that ability to target and to go there and have a deeper knowledge of what those shows are, who the hosts are. There's different ways that ads can be run. They can be host read, they can be recorded and, inserted dynamically. But, who are those hosts? How are they reading those ads? How are they connecting with their audience? So that's a really powerful part of advertising too. Podcast advertising, if you get it right, like that can be a recommendation from a friend, which is amazing. And then also like digging deeper into, we don't just have to go to general travel shows or big general audience shows. Also, what are your particular angles that your destination's looking at, whether that's the outdoors or wine or food or whatever, and what are the really cool shows and the great storytellers in those smaller, more niche genres, and how can we reach them?
Awesome. Laura, what are your thoughts on how travel brands can identify and partner with podcasts?
I think it does, building off of what Aaron said, it all goes back to the research. And we use a combination of Nielsen Scarborough data to really see what genres over-index with specific travel intent. Say we have a destination like Wyoming that is looking to reach more adventure travelers. So we can see what genres over-index and then apply that strategy. The same goes to every host that we work with does fill out a host survey. It's very basic, but it tells us what hotels that they're staying at, what destinations that they prefer, what airlines are using. Do they prefer to stay at a home Airbnb or Vrbo or Marriott or Hilton? So we use that host survey data. And then we also have our own research panel. So it's opt-in, 70,000 opt-in members. Typically for travel, we get 5,000 plus respondents. And that's where we ask them what genres that they're listening to. To Jeremy's point, we know that 90% of our podcast listeners do listen while traveling. And then we also can narrow down into the top genres. So we do use a combination of third-party host surveys and then our own research panel, because on our end, for anyone that is looking to travel in the next year, the top genres are comedy, music, and true crime. And then we can also go to the show level perspective too, to see what shows over index. And it is interesting because we work with Atlas Obscura. So we produce and then distribute Atlas Obscura's podcast. And while travel is, that's a travel contextual way to target podcast listeners, what we're seeing is a lot more from a genre standpoint is to reach people in those, an environment that maybe is comedy, because we know comedy over indexes with travel intent.
That's really cool, Laura. What strategies are you using, Jeremy, for travel brands to identify podcast partners?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it's been said already, right? We're using a combination of, looking for and going to like various resources, including our podcast partners like, SiriusXM, to use their insight tools, figure out, what demographic we might be looking for, layering in third-party data to help find, the podcasts that really over-index. It's also the contextual layer. We're using our partners to identify podcasts that are aligning with that right context, right? So it might be travel in general, or specific types of travel Aaron was mentioning, or even adjacent content themes. We think that might really align really well with our brand or the campaign that we're currently focused on. It's not always directly approaching a specific podcast, one-to-one. It could be, as Laura was mentioning, a genre of podcasts that we're kind of narrowing down to, right? Depending on, our geographic needs and all those things, right? You might have to go a little bit broader in terms of the number of podcasts you're looking to partner with so you can get that scale.
So Jeremy, we all know that crafting compelling podcast advertising is really going to be critical for the ongoing strategy. Could you share some of your best practices for creating authentic and engaging ads that resonate with the podcast listeners while also staying true to the brand's identity?
Yeah, I think it's important to remember and it's been said to some degree already, the intimate nature of podcasts. So that it has to be considered when you're thinking about the message you want to put out there, right? So again, we will work really closely with our podcast partners to land on that creative approach. Some of that, it starts with giving them creative samples from other channels that can help explore the brand position and areas that we want to focus on from a messaging perspective. And then you kind of take it from there, right? If your brand wants to lean into humor, you can carry that through and align with genres that maybe focus more on that and have a message that aligns really with that tone of that podcast. Same with like more seriously toned narratives. Maybe you're trying to focus on more serenity, right, of the destination or nature, aligned to similar things there. But the tone of the message really, our best practice there is, it's like make it more conversational. It's not like a radio ad in a lot of ways, right? This is someone you're bonding with in some way with a more personal type of relationship. So keep that in mind. Don't shout. Keep your messaging brief. If you're host read, you can go a little bit longer, right? If you're looking at maybe more of a programmatic approach to it, we find that shorter ads are working better there. So yeah, I guess that's what I have to say on that.
I want to circle back to format in just a minute.
Yeah.
But Aaron, what are your thoughts on creating authentic and engaging ads to resonate?
Yeah, I mean, to Jeremy's point on host read, that's fantastic. That's that personal recommendation from a friend. And the more sort of authentically said and personalized that is, the better. For the other side of things, if you're looking to craft in studio that 60-second ad, I kind of look at it the way, as a travel writer, what I'm always trying to do is drop people into peak moments, those incredible experiences that only your destination can offer, and that give people a glimpse of what it feels like to be there for real. And I think audio does what good writing does, which is it comes alive in your imagination. So I think that challenging yourself to go beyond a simple scripted read ad and to do something with authenticity, with local voices, with bringing in like field recordings of sound, of the ambience of a place, all that stuff goes in really deep and really helps to put people into a destination and a place and give them that glimpse of, oh, this is what it feels like. And now I want to feel a little bit of that for myself too. So yeah, I think it's about creativity and storytelling, utilizing the power of the medium and trying to put people there into those magic moments that make your destination come alive.
Laura, do you have anything to add regarding creating authentic and engaging ads?
Yeah, I mean, host read ads have always been the pinnacle of podcast advertising. And it's interesting because we work with so many different hosts. There are some hosts that would like you to completely script it out for them. And then there's some hosts, big name talent, that are like, you know what? Just send us some talking points. We're going to make it our own. So you run into that. You really have to make sure that the brand and our agency partners understand that there is going to be some riffing that maybe happen. Conan O'Brien does the best, some of the best host read ads, but he doesn't want a script. He wants you just to send him some copy points. But then there's some hosts that do not want to read ads. So that's where it's announcer read ads, and announcer read ads we did a research study with, it was Signal Hill, and we saw just as much of a brand uplift, purchase intent via announcer read ads. And those are just standard audio ads, as the podcast host read ads. I think it goes back to what Aaron and Jeremy said. It's all about that amazing ad environment, because it's that one-to-one and it's not interrupting them in their daily life. So you can really talk to them authentically.
Okay, so I want to skip over to the different types of ads that are most effective for travel marketing. And it sounds like all of you agree that host read ads are the most impactful, but let's talk about branded segments too, and sponsorships. And how would a destination or a travel brand pick which one is the most suitable for their needs? Laura, do you want to start?
It's yes, host read ads. And then, because you look at it also from the way, go back to the targeting. Host read ads with SiriusXM, it's a national play. So if you want to geo-target, if you want to contextually target travelers, you can go down to the localized level. And that's not going to be host read ads, that's going to be announcer read ads. But you just need to make sure that you have the right targeting strategy in play. What was the first part of the question again?
Oh, I was asking about the differences
targeting
in between host read, branded segments, and sponsorships.
It really, this is with custom segments, like whether it's a destination coming in and sponsoring a custom show, it does come with a higher price tag. And so you do need to look at your overall marketing budget and understand what you're trying to accomplish, because then there's also show sponsorship opportunities. And we're even expanding into the experiential side. We partnered with MGM Resorts International and Two Bears, One Cave to actually do a live podcast event. And so it just really depends on the targeting, the KPIs of the actual campaign, and also the budget that you're working with.
Awesome. Aaron, what's your take on host read, branded segments, and sponsorships overall?
Yeah, I just do a kind of slight pivot on that as well. I know we're talking primarily about advertising on podcasts, but I also think there's a really big opportunity for another element of that, which is creating your own show, creating your own home base that you use those ads to send people to. And it's like that ad is your movie trailer and your evergreen 3-part, 6-part series about your destination. That's your movie, and that's what you craft with real care and attention. And that's what you put all that authenticity and storytelling into. So I think that's one side of it too, that shouldn't be ignored, the power and importance of creating your own content and directing your ads to people there. And once you do that, it also opens up things like feed drops, which is placing your content onto established shows' feeds. And that's a great way to guarantee ROI, to create your show, drop it into 3 or 4 established travel shows, for example, and you know that you're going to get 50,000 downloads, 50,000 listens, and then that's an immediate kind of return on that investment for creating that show. But of course, you already own that show, and then you can spin off that to guest interviews and placements on players and that kind of thing as well. So yeah, I would look at that format as well as a kind of fundamental component to everything else you do.
Yeah,
And Jeremy, go ahead, Laura.
No, I completely agree. I know we're talking from a marketing standpoint, but I think that it's also so many destinations and travel brands even come to us of like, okay, cool, we want to advertise, but then how do we actually launch our own podcast? And I think that's almost a completely other conversation because it's like, what hosting platform are you going to utilize? I mean, even just all the behind the scenes of producing a podcast is incredible. Very passionate about
No, there's like a million questions running through my brain too, and we only have 6 more minutes.
Oh no.
So, Jeremy, have you directed any of your clients to do branded segments or sponsorships overall, and how did that turn out?
Yeah, we've gone down the road of that. I think, and again, things that have been said already. There's some limitations there if you're not a national brand. Where we've looked at that more on the custom segments is when we're trying to do a campaign launch or a brand relaunch, right? And we know that there's a specific talent that aligns really well with that. We're going to use it for the launch, but we also might then want to tap into for things that are beyond just doing a custom segment or a sponsorship. How can we get them on site? How can we, turn that into other social elements, right? That could expand beyond that. So we look at it a lot from there. It's really the objective, right? If you're long story, right? If you really want to get that across, then yeah, custom segments or such might be the way to go if you can't produce your own podcast. If you're going to drive wider awareness, then, I think to your question of what format's better, I mean, the voice ads, right? The non host read ads, right? I think are the ones that we're relying on more, right? Because that allows us again to be across more podcasts, be more efficient.
Okay, so real quick, what would be your number one KPI or ROI point for ensuring that the podcast marketing campaign is effective and meeting the goals of the destination or the travel brand? Jeremy?
Start with me. Yeah. We look at, again, this is where we think that the podcast needs to serve a role in whatever our journey or our goals are, right? So if we're trying to drive awareness, we're going to look at awareness-based metrics. You get really good listenership and completions on podcasts. In many cases, you're, depending on the route you go, you're only paying for completed ad listens and such. So we'll look at that, and then we'll look at kind of many like pixel-based type of tracking, right? Attribution tracking. Did we see folks who've listened to our podcast take an action later, either on our website? Did they download something? So we do that. We set up this specifically actually to isolate podcasts from our other even streaming audio channels, because we do see different results there, and we want to pay attention to that. But that is from a brand perspective. We are seeing the ability though for this to drive lower funnel KPIs too, right? Driving some actions and such. So we're monitoring that through sometimes it's like vanity URLs and promo codes and such, but it's mostly going to be pixel-based tracking this to look at that post listen experience.
Aaron, what would you say is the primary KPI brands should focus on?
In podcasting in general, I think one of the things we need to talk a lot about is engagement.
Well, we don't have a lot of time.
I'll say it very quickly then. Is engagement, right? I think one of the power of podcast is the amount of engagement time and the deepness of that engagement. We've spoken about that a lot. And so I think it's about looking at that relative engagement factor across different mediums. And, podcasting, if you're listening 30 minutes plus on average, that's very different to a social media post or a page view. So although sometimes the numbers are, a smaller net, they're much deeper net and often, arguably a more effective one too.
And Laura, what would you say is the primary KPI brands and travel brands should look for when evaluating their podcast?
Yeah, I mean, I'll talk through destinations. Destinations want to see foot traffic to the destination, and you can enable a location analytics study for podcasts. So we work with Placed Foursquare. that is definitely something that we are layering on to a majority of our destination marketing organization campaigns is location analytics studies.
Awesome. And Laura, what about your last words for all of our travel marketers who are on the show today?
My recommendation is if you are interested in podcasting from a marketing standpoint, one, reach out to me. I can walk you through if you have any questions. We have so much research on our end. I can also share different conferences to attend, and also some of my favorite podcasts, one being Conan Needs a Friend. But then also really lean on the platform. The platform, whether it is a Spotify, an iHeart, a SiriusXM, they have so much research on their end to make sure you craft the right media strategy for podcast.
Jeremy, last words?
I guess just remember it's a different format. It's not a one size fits all. Make sure that you understand that the listener is the podcaster's friend, and they don't sell products the same way, right? Friends don't sell you the same way that a brand might. So think about that in your strategy, seeking out specific podcasts, or even just in general, the messaging that you want to put out in that space.
And Aaron, what is your last words?
Well, I think I would look at podcast marketing as a whole kind of ecosystem. And I think that for me begins with your story, your destination story, and your kind of home base of your own show, and how you can send people there, and how you can build from that a whole advertising strategy that isn't just about placing ads, but is about doing guest interviews and cross promo swaps and feed drops and all these different elements that you can build into it once you have your own show. And I think creating and investing in that evergreen piece of content that is crafted specifically to make your destination come alive, that's your foundation, and that's where your strategy should build from.
Thank you so much, all three of you. This has been such a fascinating and interesting conversation for me personally, as well as for all of our listeners. And I am so grateful that you guys were able to come on and share your insights and your perspective with all of these marketers. So thank you so much. Anyone who has any questions about the State of the American Traveler or our conversation today, we will be emailing out a recording of this live stream and a copy of the deck. And so you'll be able to have that to look back on as well. If you're interested in American travelers who listen to podcasts, like I was saying earlier, this is a very interesting and distinct segment of American travelers, and we would be excited to share our results and insights with you. So once again, thank you to our panel, and thank you to everyone attending. I hope everyone has a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.